and I'm doing a day-to-day presentation. But you know what's really bad? Is Caleb's only 13. So obviously I don't know what I'm talking about. But they've really set this up really well. Matt talked about operations, maintenance. How do we, is it not going for us? Awesome. So we're talking about operations and maintenance. How do we, are we making this data handover complicated? Or, a better question, are we handing this data over at all? Or why are we not handing it over? So, I am the customer success engineer for BIM 360 Ops. I kind of stumbled into that position because of Arkansas Children's Northwest and being able to deliver 60 gig of data to that hospital at substantial completion and starting operations before they ever saw a patient. So that's what got me the job at Autodesk. So we know the descriptions here. So I feel very fortunate to have grown up in the BIM industry per se. It is fun. Is it not an exciting time? It really is. I mean, things are changing. I mean, I still have the callus on my finger from hand drawing on a drafting table. And to see the change I start my 24th year, August 4th. To see the change in that amount of time has been incredible. And I consider the maintenance data that we use for design and construction as BIM data as well. I just left the ASHE conference to come here yesterday, the American Society of Healthcare Engineers. There was actually 3 presentations on BIM data being delivered, or in those cases, not being delivered, and then figuring out how to get that data from the AEC side. So that's what we're going to talk about when learning objectives. So a survey. I did this last year when I was with my former company, T&E Engineers out of Little Rock. So do you feel BIM is being cost effective? Yeah, what do you think? Pretty much, we've got it down, we've got it figured out. We just had someone say, yeah, BIM 360 is working. It may not work exactly like we want it to all the time, but it's working. So, what about this? Is it too complicated sometimes? Do we do that to ourselves? I mean, we have some of the smartest people in the industry in this room today. Right? I mean, come on. We are. Well, y'all are, I'm not. I'm just Arkansas country boy. But do we sometimes overcomplicate things for ourselves and make it difficult on ourselves when we're applying BIM and the standards of BIM and the application of BIM? Are we trying to make a one-size-fits-all versus let's make a size for this specific owner. Let's make a size for this specific owner. Are we really thinking about that? Have we made it too complicated? Granted, we need every piece of data that's been discussed today. We need that data. We can use that data. We can use those sensors. We can pull that operations and maintenance data. But here's my concern. Do you feel that BIM is being delivered to owners in an efficient way? Why not? We saw generative design. We saw all these models being made. Why are we not delivering? What's the holdup? What do we realize? So there's going to be some questions here. They're to make you think. Wish it could be more interactive, but we've got too many people in the room. But I really want you to think about, when was the last time you delivered the owner the data that they needed to maintain their building when they needed to start maintaining that building, not when you wanted to deliver that data? And then I also want you to think about, are you delivering the data the owner needs versus the data you want to deliver? Is that two different things? So, I was asked to give some takeaways on this. So at the end, there's a link to a facility management data spec, a sample. And then as part of my handout, I have 2 pages of questions to ask the owner's facility teams what they need to maintain that facility. We've got all that data. We're capturing all that data. Let's think about how and when we're going to deliver that data. So this is my keyword. This is why I work at Autodesk now, is facilities data. I'll tell you what, the passion that I have for facilities, as I mentioned, my son is autistic. We found out at a very young age. We noticed that he could spin things in unison at 6 months of age. So the very first 5 years of his life was spent in hospitals learning what to do, learning how to handle him. And I got to see what was going on in some of these facilities. I made friends with the facilities manager because I helped design Arkansas Children's Hospital back in years earlier. I got to take Caleb into the facilities manager's department. So I developed a knowledge of what was going on inside that facility. Like, we were in the dental office. So my son has to be completely strapped down to go in a dental office. And they have to take special cameras to be able to see his teeth. The walls in this dental clinic at Arkansas Children's Hospital were painted a yellowish brown. And when you put light on that and you try to look at teeth, what do you think that causes? Very simple piece of data that was missed during the design process. But it was fixed during the maintenance process. So think facilities data. That's where I get my passion from. So we've already talked about this. So when should building operations and maintenance data be turned over? When they pay for it? Yeah. So what if, so that's our traditional process, data turnover process now. Substantial completion, or not substantial completion, but when they pay for it. When is that? How many months or years after that building's been handed over do they get their closeout documentation? I asked 300 hospital facility managers last year when they got their data for their hospitals. Most of the room was between 8 months and 12 months of when they got handed their closeout data. The data they need to maintain that facility for the environment of care, for your and my safety. What's wrong with that? Why are we not? So that's what I want to make you think about. Let's think on that. So what's the number one killer in a hospital? So infections are number one killer inside a hospital. They're airborne, right? If we don't have that team, that maintenance team data on the air handling unit system, what can develop in 8 months to a year? Infections are airborne, right? They can go throughout that HVAC system just like that. So we need to be thinking about when they need to start maintaining this. So if we're not providing the data, let's just say a year, let's say 6 months. Who has to go collect that data for the CMMS or for the technicians? Who does that? How many hours does it take to go collect that? If you haven't turned over the closeout documentation or the maintenance data and they're operating that building, they have to go find that, right? It takes almost an hour and a half to 2 hours per asset to go grab a ladder, go find that VAV box, come back to the maintenance office, hand that data over to the CMMS administrator, and then plug in that data. When we as an industry have every bit of that data as part of our BIM process. That's where we want to think. Let's think about that. Where, as an owner, where's your data stored? Can you access it? Can you, I didn't bring my phone up here, but can you access it from your handheld device? That's where we're going. We can spin models on our devices. We can look, Google, Facebook, Twitter, they know, LinkedIn, they know exactly where we are right now, right? Do they not? So why can't we get that data in the hands of people who needs to know where a VAV box is, who needs to know where a plumber is, who needs to know where an automatic door opener is, or who needs to know where a shutoff valve for a fire protection system is because somebody knocked a sprinkler head off. Is that BIM data that we could be delivering? Maintenance manuals, truckloads and truckloads of PDFs, right? Or books. Where do those books go? That's correct. Applied desk. So I saw on a facility, I saw a 3.2 gigabyte PDF given to the owner for an O&M manual. How usable, I mean, granted, we have some great tools for PDF. There's some amazing tools. But how usable is that for a facility maintenance team or a facilities maintenance technician? Is that really usable, searchable? So let's think about how we're delivering things. So what I want to set is kind of a start moving toward an industry goal of deliverables. But also, let's change how the contractors get paid for this data. Let's look at our contracts, see how our contracts are written, and make sure that they're getting paid for the data when they deliver it at substantial completion. It's a different thought concept, right? Contractors will love that if we can get them paid. So here's what I would like to see us move forward to get them the actionable and contextual data they need so that they can start working on the systems as they're turned on. So when an air handling unit gets turned on, should we be recording that maintenance? So should we be logging that maintenance somewhere and be able to hand to that owner? Is that something we're currently doing? Did you know? And so I grew up in the healthcare industry, so I know a lot about hospitals. That's why I'm talking about hospitals. Do you know in a hospital, Joint Commission or the Regulatory Commission for Medicaid and Medicare can come in 90 days after a hospital opens or after a renovation takes place, and they can cite them for not having their maintenance data up to date? So we write all these different BIM standards, all these different naming nomenclatures. They can also cite if a procedure room requires a standard air pressurization. If we, as part of the BIM, start tinkering with those names and tinkering with some of that data, that can get them out of compliance as well. Because a procedure room has to meet certain requirements for air. Even if a nurse or a doctor or a maintenance tech says that that storage room, they're doing procedures in there, then that surveyor has to consider that room as a procedure room instead of a storage room. So you got to meet those air requirements. So there's all this data that these facilities can use and that these authority-having jurisdictions can use if we deliver it a little bit earlier in the process. And that's what we're talking about here. So asset data. So this is a little story. I'm going to walk you through how to collect, what the owners need, what the owners want, this facility data spec. Do you know we can do it in, so Apple earlier this year released the indoor mapping solutions, the IWMS. How many of you know what that is? So how cool would it be to be able to walk a technician to a work order or to a specific asset in a facility using a Revit model map, room naming, to know the difference between a corridor, a bathroom, a stair, or just a typical room, or even a kitchen. To be able to put the data in those models, to be able to incorporate that into an Apple map. That's the kind of data facilities can use. That's the kind of data we can send from our Revit. So here we go. What do owners need for asset data? There are so many different aspects of this. See, what I do, I go talk. If I was talking to Matt here, I'd go to Matt, find out what Matt needs for this amazing facility he just showed us. How is that going to be maintained? What schedules do you need? Are you going to use manufacturers' recommendations, or are you going to use your own best practice recommendations? Because that's two totally different ways to maintain a building, and we can capture that data through the design and construction process. So that's something you need to know when you deliver your closeout documents. But do we ever think about that? Do we ever ask that question? Or do we know to ask that question? I didn't know to ask that question until I started working more with facilities. Renovation projects. Man, I've been asked about renovation projects more in the last 4 months, 5 months, than I ever have before. How do you maintain that Revit model? How do you maintain those construction models? If the owner has that model, can they just hand it out to someone? They gotta be very careful. You gotta be thinking about that. You know, I almost got my company, TME, in some major trouble with our insurance company because of a BIM process that I tried to work on. I almost got our insurance canceled for that engineering firm. So be careful and think about what you're doing, what your processes are, and also think about the legal aspects of what you're working on and how you're delivering it, because it is a very key element of getting the owner the correct data. You know, we talk about this one model concept. This handover, this turnover, all of these processes. What if we were able to take these models, be able to zoom in, be able to look for data right in on a map inside of Revit, or from Revit. Be able to find mobile assets, because are mobile assets part of our BIM, or do we just construct the building and walk away? We've got mobile assets that we need to find. That's a computer on wheels inside of Arkansas Children's Northwest that moves around the emergency room. And sometimes they get lost. Do you ever lose things?
Never.
What if we had beacons where we could find those and then walk to them? Directions. Developing a delivery plan for this and talking to the owners. See if the owners want this or need this. So right here, so this is all of our building commissioning data that we captured during construction. But then on the shell space, we wanted to capture what it looked like before it was finished out, before it was buttoned up. So we used a lightweight laser scan. Instead of the model, we updated it with a laser scan inside the room, so that the technician can actually see the VEV boxes. They can see the fire-rated walls, because, you know, fire-rated walls don't mean anything, right? So we're trying to add, we want to be able to look at adding value for the owner from our BIM deliverables. Let's think outside the box instead of our tradition. We are doing an amazing job with BIM and Revit. I mean, some of these presentations today have been amazing. But let's start focusing some effort on maintenance. Let's get that logo off the screen there. Let's start focusing on some of the requirements, how to find out those requirements. And the presentation is on the app, will be. And then if you contact me, I'll be glad to share it as well. So there's they wanted me to give you a deliverable, so I tried to make this a deliverable presentation. QR codes. Everybody using QR codes, barcodes? So what if we had those on doors as well as assets, mobile assets? And we have those from the start of construction, or when do we know about the equipment that we're purchasing that we're going to put in that building? I know it varies depending upon what type of project it is. But when we get that, when we do that purchase order and that piece of equipment comes in, can we not start pulling data on that piece of equipment from that purchase order and start filling out some of this O&M data? Start barcoding it right then and there before it ever goes to the field? I mean, we're doing some or doing it in these facilities where we're building these amazing, we're prefabbing, put it on during the prefab stage instead of getting it during the construction stage. Now, one of the things we did on Arkansas Children's is we let the technicians slap all the asset tags on the equipment they use. They put on over 2,500 asset tags on this building for equipment that they were going to maintain. We didn't do every light fixture. We didn't do every chair or desk. We did exit signs. We did emergency light fixtures. We did the air handling units. We did automatic door openers. Because what happens in the event of emergency? An automatic door opener doesn't work. So think about that. Think about that data that they need to keep that, what in a hospital is called an environment of care, or what in a traditional building would be a safety value. How can we make that building safer for our occupants by keeping it maintained? Asset data. Ooh, so this can go a lot of different ways. So here you got asset ID, manufacturer, serial number, location, warranties, O&M documentation, pictures. So if I had my phone, I can't believe I was going to take a picture. That's data, right? Sometimes that can be very important data. What if we give them away, or what if we give the contractors away to document their data, to document this building before an owner actually takes ownership of it? Because how many times do we have these callbacks saying, oh, this isn't working? But what if we had a place to store these pictures, these 3D cameras, these lightweight laser scans, right along with the asset, and be able to deliver that as part of the deliverable? Now that will also help with the warranties, because warranties are huge in our industry. But what if we can cut down on some of that, where as part of substantial completion, occupants of the building start moving into that building, right? Start finding things. But what if we gave them a way to document that, what they find, and be able to show to the contractors, be able to show to the architects, be able to show to the engineers? Arkansas Children's Hospital, it faces the south, all glass. But you know what didn't get put in was blinds in the patient rooms. So can you imagine the Arkansas sun on the 4th floor of that hospital be coming into a patient room? So it's things like that that we can start showing and maintaining, not only from our BIM side, but from the owner side, and where we meet and marry together and truly start working as a cohesive team. Because we hear architect, engineer, construction all the time, right? AEC. But where's that owner? Where's the largest cost of a building? It's in the 80% of operations and maintenance and running that building. So we, I hope, can start focusing just a little bit more on that. And as we start focusing more, it's going to grow. And we're going to be able to help these owners, and we're going to be able to maintain these owners. And it's going to be able to create a new revenue stream for some people, for some engineers, for some architects, for some contractors, for some building commissioning agents, for some of these software vendors. Let's start thinking outside the box. How can we get this data to the owners? Ooh, this is really interesting. So this facilities data, how many of you have ever issued a facilities data spec or even heard of one? So a few. So did you put delivery dates on the assets of when you want them delivered? Did you assign who was to gather each piece of information that was in that facility spec? All the way down to subcontractors. You didn't have to name the specific subcontractor, but you put subcontractor required for bell size, subcontractor required for BAS link. You know, you've got your commissioning agent required for manufacturer model number, serial number that they do at their startup if you have a commissioning agent. It's a different thought process, but you go through assign. So, I hate to say this, but I'm also proud of it. So I'm taking off my Autodesk hat here, putting on my TME hat. So on Arkansas Children's Northwest, we had 3.1 gig of as-built drawings delivered before substantial completion. There was 36 different sets of PDFs that we got. But we had it in our spec that we wanted them before substantial completion, and guess what? They got paid for all that data that they delivered at substantial completion. So, as part of this, we sat and worked with the owner. We had about 4 or 5 meetings where we sat and worked with the owner. We looked at Arkansas Children's CMS, the flagship 4 million square foot hospital in Little Rock, to see how they were operating, to see what data they were looking for. So we did a data mining. Now, I'm not smart enough to do everything you just did. I couldn't go anywhere near that. So we did a data mining, a very simple data mining, looking what they wanted to do. Then we applied it to this spec. Then we took it to the next step. What parameters do you want? The air handling units had 56 different parameters that they wanted to capture. Almost all of them had the breaker panel, breaker number, and panel room location associated with that asset. That was all delivered before substantial completion. So we had actually, before they opened, we actually had over 500 preventive maintenance procedures up and running in the system before they ever saw a patient. Because we were able to take the data, process the data, and get it organized. Now, so are there any manufacturers in the room other than Tesla? So, manufacturers have this data, right? How do they give it to us most of the time? PDFs? How do they create those PDFs? Word documents? So how do we get maintenance procedures into these complicated CMMS systems? Like change belt size, change filter, on a generator, the generator test, on a, automatic door opener, you gotta check it once a year, plus the list of procedures. How do we get those procedures? We get them in a PDF. Why are we accepting that when it has to be uploaded through an Excel spreadsheet? Should we not be asking our vendors, so they have these maintenance procedures, these quarterly, yearly, monthly, already done for us in a Word format, or some of them even already have an Excel format? Why are we not asking them to provide that in that type of format that makes it easier for us to deliver? It's just a change in our thought process, because we've always got in our mind, we've got to deliver those PDFs, O&Ms for those owners. What if we start delivering spreadsheets that we can upload, or that they can upload, or that you as a consultant can upload for them? It's just a change in our thought process. But this data spec, there is a blog. I did a blog about it about 1.5 to 2 years ago when I was still at TD. It is the actual, it's a sample. It doesn't have all 76 pages. I think it has like 16 pages of data that you can look at and see. And if you feel free to contact me if you have any more, but it's there. There's a link on the presentation for it. One of the things I found very interesting, that spec started at 36 pages long. When I went and had the meeting with the owner's rep, the architectural, the engineering rep, the contractor, the subcontractors, the commissioning agent, and the BAS were all in the room. That's where I come up with that's where they come up with, not me, assigning every piece of data, and here was to collect it, and when it was supposed to be delivered. It wasn't me that came up with that. It was us working as a team to develop that for the owner. So that spec went from 30-something pages to almost 80 pages long. But you know what? We never had another question about the spec once it was revised. And we were able to collect the data. So it's worked on several projects now. That's why we're showing it. It's a different concept. It takes a little bit of getting used to. Delivery plans. This is what I've kind of already touched on this. But don't wait to the end. This process, the process on Arkansas Children's Northwest started in July of 2015. The building didn't start design until September of 2015? And then it opened February of 2018. So we started talking about facilities data 2.5 to 3 years before that building opened. So think of that process as well. We think of all these analytics, all this data that we've shown here. We can generate these thousands. That number Anthony put up here a while ago, that was an amazing number, right? If we can generate that, why can't we just twist our operations and maintenance process? Scheduled maintenance. That's what we're talking about, getting those documents from the vendors that we need to do this. Somebody talked about pretty dashboards earlier that you can use. We're finding that if you give them a dashboard that's touchable and clickable, technicians love that versus having to go search for something. So just think a little bit about how you're doing that. So Arkansas boy, so we have Angel 1 flies in and out of the heliport at this hospital. We've had to run deer off the heliport. We've had to run geese, ducks, all kinds of wildlife. So what they do now is they actually have roundings. And so they actually use some of the BIM data to help build what they needed roundings and where they needed to be in the building at a certain time. They actually use the Revit model to help with that. Indoor mapping, IMDF, is relatively new, like I said, just was taken there. So our vendors sometimes don't know our facility, right? What if we can give them a way to find an asset and actually walk them to that? Or find a ticket inside the system, inside their CMMS, and walk them to that ticket. All using data from Revit, room names, room locations, all of that data that we already have and using it. So let's think. So we talked a little bit there. Let's skip on here. I want to show this one. So how many people have problems with? Sorry. How many people have problems with vandalism on their campus or on their sites? So what if we could start building a map with our BIM data off of our ticketing system and be able to show where our hot spots of vandalism were? Or taking BIM data to show an infection control map in a hospital for each different floor. We can use this data that we're creating in so many different ways. Let's think about it. So let's go back here. Right there. So what do owners gain? We all know this. We do this with our design and construction. You know, we want to do the cross, but we want to integrate. You know, I'm Autodesk. We know that. But we want to be able to integrate with other facilities. We've got this amazing data. Let's plug it into the systems that our owners are using. Figure out the best processes, the means and methods to get that data into those systems. And sometimes we get hung up on, we've got to have a Revit model to use this data. Let's pull some of this legacy data that doesn't have them attached to it. Because it's still building information, is it not? And it's still a data model, is it not? So let's think about that as well. Let's twist our thinking a little bit. So here's some links to our data. The first is an article on facility maintenance and data. The second is the O&M spec. The third is a chapter and a paragraph of a BIM book that I wrote with Arizona in consultation with Arizona State, with Aaron Dottie Gosh and Dr. Alan Chasey. Some what I consider some very good information in these links. I do have to leave tomorrow, so I will not be around. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to find me today, and let's have a talk. And, make sure you rate my session 0.6, and I appreciate your attention. Any questions or thoughts, or am I totally off my rocker? Yes.
I've been doing this for like a decade with facilities. The problem is we actually have an industry problem where the people in this room understand most of this. The problem is we don't have anything like a UK BIM mandate conversation going on, and the AIA is really the problem, in my opinion, because just take a look at their quote unquote, we update our contracts every 10 years, which was 2 years ago, which did nothing really to reflect on the last 10 years of technology. So what are you doing in that regards to looking at contracts and deliverables with AIA, because obviously it's a nation and all the other problems, but we can bang around this conversation in this room all day long, and we know it, but it's not just going to happen.
So what I've been working with is I've been working with the owners to modify their specific contract language. And granted, that is a huge need in our industry, that it's going to take one owner and then a group of owners to get together and then go to the AIA and say, we need this. But like you said, the 10-year program, the 10 years is a problem. So it's going to be on an owner by owner basis right now, which doesn't work, but that's where we got to start somewhere. I know, so like I said, I left ASHI. They had a meeting Tuesday night on the very topic you just said. that they're going to get together and try to drive a BIM deliverable specification, whatever they're going to work with. I will find out more information about that. But it's going to take people working together to try to get this changed. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in the next 5 years. But we got to start somewhere. Any other questions? There's some other hands a while ago.
So I keep hearing all these conversations all the time about what do we hand over to owners and facilities. Well, I'm tired of hearing about it. Frankly, coming from the mechanical space, we've got service and maintenance group. I rarely ever hear anyone have a conversation about how do we leverage what we already have in service and maintenance to better inform design. I've asked service and maintenance people over the years, when's the last time an engineer's talked to you about your opinion on a piece of equipment? And the answers I get is in 30 years it's never happened. Why does nobody ever look at that aspect? You know, we keep looking at what new tools can we do, what new things can we do, and we're ignoring a lot of data that's already there. Granted, in some cases it's incomplete because we only collect what we're paid to collect historically, but there's still data there that we can use.
And that's true, and that's, you know, it's changing our thought process. It's changing the engineering thought processes. You know, I worked for an engineering firm for the last 14 and a half years. And, you know, they are very stuck in their ways. Unless you get an owner on board that says, hey, you need to listen to these people. I want you to get, you know, like your mechanical firm there, use their expertise to help me design my building. And a lot of that goes back to contract language as well. But you're right, that is the issue. Now, we did, on this children's project, we did have the mechanical firm in there early in design because we had to. And it was a design bid build project. It wasn't a design assist. But they knew who they wanted over years of use, and they wanted their expertise on the design of this new facility. I know that doesn't answer your question like you wanted, but that's...
There is no answer.
There is, you're right.
Yeah.
It's a tough one. Any other questions? Yes.
I wonder if, I know that Europe and the UK especially is much, much further along in terms of developing BIM standards. Did they have standards and processes in place that might be of assistance here?
So, so does the UK have processes in place that can help us in this? So I've been working with a contractor in Ireland, and they've got some things that we could use, and as part of my job, I'm trying to incorporate some of that. So there is some things over there that we could use that could help us, that's for sure, yes. Now, it's kind of like here, it's a hit and miss with some of them over there as well, as I'm finding, because I actually service the UK and Europe as well. So it's been an interesting, for me, it's been very interesting to see what they're doing over there. Yes?
Yeah, you talked a lot about owners wanting to have the data, right?
Uh-huh.
On the AE side, I think one of the problems that we often run into is that owners don't keep their own records, right? Having worked in hospitals, I'm sure you've seen this a lot, where as facilities evolve over time, lots of information gets lost. So have you worked with owners, or have you helped owners to understand the value of their own record keeping for the fact that a facility is going to live 25, 50, 100 years? Because that information is also critically valuable when it comes back for renovation.
I'm beginning to get there on that. That's difficult because you're telling them that their processes are wrong, and that's very difficult to do. But if you start showing them the value and what they can save, like on Arkansas Children's, there was a savings, and granted, it was only 230,000 square foot hospital, but they're estimating they saved over 2,100 man hours by us delivering that data and not going. So I'm looking at the ROIs and trying to show them if you've got this data and you start keeping it and maintaining it. So Arkansas Children's actually hired a consultant to help keep up with all this data, and their Revit models. They thought that was a value add for their facilities team. So it's all in working with that owner, and granted, it is such, we've talked about it for years, but it hasn't really been implemented like it needs to be. And so that's where we've got to start working on this. And I think that's why they selected this presentation and made me get up here and sweat in front of all these smart people. Yes? There's a microphone right behind you.
Adam Sissel, GLI Construction, based out of here in Seattle, Bellevue area. Question for you, I saw a lot of graphics there and a little bit of video utilizing Matterport, and I wondered, do you come into any issues with Matterport's terms and conditions? There's been a barrier for me, using their product. Just wonder if you could talk to that because of their heavy ownership rights of that, NDAs and such. I can't really I can't really use them yet, just because of that hurdle. Have you had that issue?
We are having, so in traditional Autodesk, that is something that is being discussed without saying, since I'm Autodesk, if I was TME, I would give you an answer. But that solution is being looked at by my team, by the team that I work on. There are other solutions other than Matterport that you can use them. Thank you very much, Mark.
Hi, it's been a busy morning. Lunch is outside. There's a few tables. You can also place your plates by adjacent to them.